Some people might call it draining the swamp. Maybe the better question is, how toxic is the EPA about to become with embattled Administrator Scott Pruitt now out? The president announced the news and named Andrew Wheeler as the acting head of the agency. Trump still praised Pruitt, despite 15 ongoing investigations involving the former EPA chief. In Pruitt's official resignation letter, he noted it was an honor to serve under President Trump. Actually, it was such an honor, he mentioned that phrase 8 times throughout the letter and signed off with, "Your faithful friend, Scott Pruitt." Joining me now to discuss, Eric Lipton, an investigative reporter for the New York Times. Dawn Reeves is senior correspondent for Inside EPA. So, Eric, you've got some new reporting in an article that came out, I think, right just minutes before the announcement that Scott Pruitt was gone. You say, quote, "Last summer, one of his senior schedulers, Madeline G. Morris, was fired by Mr. Pruitt's former deputy chief of staff, Kevin Chmielewski, who said he let her go because she was questioning the practice of retroactively deleting messages from the calendar." Lay out some of the other details of your reporting and anything you might know about why, after all of these investigations, he's gone now.
Sure. I mean, what was happening there, apparently, according to Kevin Chmielewski and another aide who was a scheduler who had worked on the Hill and for Koch Industries and became an aide to Pruitt, that they were making modifications in his schedule to remove things that Pruitt did not want to become public and that might be embarrassing to him. Modifying a federal record after something has been put on paper or in a computer system is both a civil and potentially a criminal offense. And I think that that reflects part of the reason that Scott Pruitt has now departed the building, or departing today, is that we shifted from just, questions about his elaborate spending and security, first-class flights, to things that were potentially real ethics violations and potentially even criminal violations. And so it was getting more serious. And I think at the White House, the Chief of Staff Kelly was completely fed up with this. They were, how many stories a day are we going to get that are embarrassing us? And also, we had the midterms coming up, and Pruitt was a liability, and they didn't want him to cause the party to get hurt.
Don, the obvious follow-up to that is, does Pruitt go out into the world with a clean slate now? All of this just goes away, or are there still potential liabilities for him?
Well, I think there are some potential liabilities for the investigations that have found or will find anything criminally wrongdoing. There was Congress had determined that some of the money that he spent securing his office was in violation of. He needed to go and ask Congress for permission to do that, and he did not do so. So whether those things continue or not after he leaves, I think remains to be seen. I think he'll go back to Oklahoma, and frankly, some of this might help him there in his further career, whatever he decides that might be.
Let me ask you a little bit about Andrew Wheeler, Dawn, because obviously environmental activists cheered. They've been wanting Pruitt gone, well, since before he was even confirmed. And we heard a lot from progressive members of Congress, so happy he's gone. But is his exit actually going to change anything policy-wise in the EPA?
Well, maybe a few things policy-wise. Andy Wheeler will continue with the deregulatory agenda for sure. He's probably going to be a bit more methodical than Scott Pruitt was, so they may not move as fast under Wheeler. And there's a few things that Andy may back off from. Pruitt was gunning to have a fight with California over some of the vehicle rules, and I'm not quite sure that that's something that Wheeler's going to want to undertake. So you will see some differences.
And meantime, in his resignation letter, Eric, Scott Pruitt complained about the unrelenting and unprecedented attacks against him and his families. I just want to remind people of the moment that Pruitt was actually confronted about President Trump draining the swamp.
President Trump said he would drain the swamp. Is draining the swamp renting an apartment from the wife of a Washington lobbyist?
I don't think that that's even remotely fair to ask that question.
Yeah, he didn't think any of this was fair. You've been covering Pruitt, Eric, for years. You tweeted your first report, I think, on then Oklahoma Attorney General from 2014. And you say that the common themes from the 2014 report never went away. Explain.
Well, what I saw in 2014 when he was Attorney General was that he was already working extremely closely with the oil and gas industry to try to help move its agenda, and he was suing repeatedly the Obama administration to try to block rules that the oil and gas industry and coal industry did not want. And so then, and he was doing that at times same time as he was taking large amounts of money through a Republican Attorney General's group and taking documents from them and then sending them in his own name to Washington. He comes to Washington, he spends most of his time meeting when he's outside of the office with oil, gas, coal, and agriculture industry executives, and it seems as if this alliance between him and the industry really continued. And for him to suggest that this was the media going after him, I mean, we would rather focus on writing about environmental policy, but we kept being distracted by things he was doing that even his own allies and people that he hired said was unethical. And we were compelled to spend our time writing those stories. It was not out of any personal desire to hurt him or his family or to embarrass him. It was his own actions that resulted in his departure.
It's actually what journalists do, and I suppose maybe he thinks Laura Ingraham is one of the people who was so unfair to him because she had turned against him. I want to show you both, you probably saw it, the New York Post. They re-upped their Survivor White House cover with a season 2 update showing Pruitt axed from the administration, obviously. They're making a joke, but Pruitt wasn't the only one under scrutiny, Eric, for spending or travel. You've got Ryan Zinke, Steve Mnuchin, Ben Carson, Wilbur Ross. With all the ethics questions that they have raised, do you think that this is a one-off, or does this signal anything for them?
I mean, Pruitt was just such a different league with the frequency
from
of the
anyone
scandals.
Ever.
Yes.
Yeah. And
so, I mean, with Mnuchin, we had a blips, and Zinke, we've had some blips. There's more to report on both of them, I'm sure, and perhaps there will be resources that can shift to some of the other agencies, and to focus on good, bad, and different things that they're doing. But I think the extent of ethics wrongdoing, the only House oversight investigation going on actively of a sitting member of Trump's cabinet was the EPA, and he was there was an open investigation. His top staffers were being called in one at a time. Why is that? It wasn't made up.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.